Okay, hello and welcome to today's webcast. This is the second in a three-part series presented by Jet Reports with the theme of Getting Real About Business Intelligence. And today's event is all about the BI journey. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and I'm really glad to be back today with our presenter, John Esch, Vice President for BI at Jet Reports, and John's guest, Alan O'Toole from Diploma Healthcare Group. John, welcome back. Thanks for being here. And before I hand off control, let me just add to the folks on the line that we do invite you in the audience to ask your questions today. You can use the Q&A block that you see to the right of the slides. John and Alan will leave some time at the end for questions. So without further delay, John, let me hand things off to you.
All right. Hey, everybody. John Esch here from Jet Reports. For those of you that are returning from yesterday, welcome back. And for everybody that is new today, welcome to the session. So what we're doing this week with dynamicsworld.com is a three-part series on business intelligence. Today we're going to talk to one of our clients, Diploma Healthcare Group, and we have the esteemed Alan O'Toole with us. And we're going to go through a set of questions on how he chose the software, what goals he had in mind, what they're actually doing with it, what's going to happen in the future, and hopefully we're going to have some good stuff, some good advice that you can take home with you for your own BI project as you're in whatever stage you are thinking about it. So a couple of housekeeping things. I'm going to do my best to keep this to 30 minutes. My goal is to keep it to 29 minutes. So forgive Alan and I for talking fast. I'm going to try to do less. I'm the one you got to worry about in terms of talking too much. So I'm going to let Alan do most of the talking, and I'm just going to ask questions. And let's just get started. I'm going to do a little refresher from yesterday so we can get everybody who wasn't there yesterday on the same page. So this slide is about Jet, and it says, yay, Jet is great. And what I want to point out there is that we've been in the dynamics market for a long time, 15 years. We got 10,000 clients around the world, hundreds of thousands of users. And I stress those points because you don't stay in a market that long unless you're having success with your clients. That's what we're all about here at Jet is we're not really selling software. We're trying to make people successful with their data management. That's our main goal. So as a review, yesterday one of the main things we talked about is how business intelligence is much more than just software. And the point that I made on that is that if you look at this chart that I got from a Deloitte white paper, shows business intelligence in the middle with all these different sections of what makes up your company, all these little company departments or activities around the outside. What this implies to me is that building business intelligence that works for your company is really about a conscious approach. You can't just plug it in and have it work. The conscious approach is a blending of all these enterprise resources to deliver this predictable, complete, consistent, reliable source of information that it delivers on the promise of BI that you see everybody talking about. And we talked about how even though software is only one part of that equation, it is actually a very important part. I mean, maybe it's 10% of the approach. But that's a very, very important 10%. And what Jet does in terms of its software is that we use a concept called data warehouse automation. And it takes a different approach to implementing BI environments. And and we have a recording of yesterday's session. You can watch that if you want to hear the details. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to show the software working, so you get to see exactly how it works and what I'm talking about. But essentially, with the Jet approach and with data warehouse automation software, you save time because the technology allows you to do things differently. You mitigate your risk because you deliver the things that you're trying to deliver fast, and you do it often. You have shorter implementation times, faster delivery, easier maintenance. And so that just means lower costs and a faster return or faster time to value. Okay, so let me introduce Alan, and let me introduce Diploma Healthcare Group. And so you can see there they are a healthcare management group. They acquire companies that manufacture and sell various healthcare devices, and they work with them in getting those companies out to market. And I'm sure that I butchered that. I'm going to give Alan a chance to talk about exactly what they do. But Alan is vice president for them, and is, frankly speaking, one of the smartest guys that we at Jet work with, our Alan, I haven't told you this before, but our implementation team really enjoys the time that they spend with you. And really, that's one of the reasons why I picked you to have this conversation with, because I really liked the way and the reasons and the method by which you chose our software and by which you actually implemented it. So this is where Alan gets to introduce himself and start talking. So tell us a little bit about Diploma Health Group, Alan.
Hi, thanks, John. Thanks for the introduction. I'll quickly cover a little bit about Diploma. John touched on it. We manage and help grow and acquire healthcare companies. We have now 6 across around the world, 3 in Canada, 2 in Australia, 1 in Ireland, and they tend to come in a business every year or 2, and all 6 obviously come in at different ERP systems and different reporting histories and requirements. We are quite a small overseeing management group, so we tend to have some large company needs and large company reporting requirements, but we're really a collection of small companies, so that can add a challenge as well. We plan to move all the companies to AX. We have the largest one is live on AX, and we are 3 weeks from a go live on company number 2 with AX.
All right, and so Alan, what I hear in that story is that you have a couple of things there. You have a data environment, a BI environment that is complex because you have a bunch of different systems that you're trying to aggregate into one. And you also have one that is constantly changing.
Yes, for sure. We're acquiring a new business. The goal is 1 a year. They come on board with different systems, different historical sort of reporting, history of what they felt was important, what we feel is important. We are, even before coming on AX, before Jet, we were a BI, maybe a little ahead of our time. We are a BI user. We used a very old system, a very manual system, but the concepts have been in place for a while.
Right. Yeah, and that scenario in whatever final form it takes is pretty consistent across BI users. Is that there is generally some complexity there, right? And as we get into that BI project, more and more layers of that complexity gets revealed, and then you also have that constant change. So I think a lot of people out there listening today can relate. Brings us to our next question. So tell us how you had used a BI system before, right? Tell us how you decided you needed a new one.
Well, we used the same system for probably 10 or 12 years, and strictly for sales reporting. We all know BI encompasses a lot more elements of your business, but for sales reporting, we used quite an old system that was quite manual, and really, to simplify it, it was a data dump from the system. We built a cube, and we have a tool that people could review the cubes. We knew it was getting outdated, but we sort of limped along for a few years. We went live with AX, and as much as you can in testing, you test things, but until you're live, we realize, and we know they had built-in sort of BI. We wanted to see how that would go. We quickly realized that wasn't sufficient for us, the built-in cubes, for a few reasons. And we also realized that our sort of older system that would manually create cubes wasn't sufficient to get the data out of AX. So that's what got us to where we needed to make a decision on a tool to use going forward.
Right. And again, sort of a likely scenario there, as what we see is well, first we see that Microsoft story all the time. I mean, as much as I love Microsoft, as much as I love the way they tell that story, I just, very frankly speaking, I just don't think that the out-of-the-box cubes stuff that they have is really ready for prime time yet, because it just, our contention is that every company is different. There's no one-size-fits-all anything, and so the cubes that come out of the box with Microsoft you have to customize those, and they just don't give you a good set of tools to be able to do that. It's all kind of manual coding, and it can be very hard. I always encourage people to do exactly what you did, which is take a look at those things first, right, and make your own decision. I think you have to do your due diligence on that.
Yeah,
So
they've done some things in their cubes. They've just tried to throw everything at the customer to think they covered it, but it doesn't really work. And notwithstanding how difficult it is to make a change to the cubes, because it has to go through a development cycle, so a minor change takes a while. A simple scenario we faced was in the old ERP system, we sold everything on a sales order transaction. It was no problem. Whether it was a large capital piece or a consumable item or a service item, it was just sold. Anyone listening who's familiar with AX knows that those now come from different elements, where there's a service is reported on completely different than sales order, and then all our capital is billed through projects. And if you just look at the built-in cubes, those they show up in very different areas of AX. Well, from a reporting perspective and to maintain some historical consistency, it's a sale is a sale, and we want to see it in one area, not a projects module and a sales module and a service module.
Right. Yeah, and wow, that's a really interesting point, because that's kind of what a data warehouse gives you, which the Microsoft stuff doesn't use. Is you can't combine all these kind of related topics that come from different areas inside the ERP unless you have a true data warehouse. And so, yeah, great point. So, you talked a little bit about what you're looking for. Can we get into some of the specifics? I remember when we talked before this session, you talked about the fact that Diploma is doing a bunch of acquisitions, so you need JET to kind of evaluate, the data that comes from those acquisitions. What's their sales revenue worth? You talked about using historical data. You have external files. You have this fascinating concept of an adjustment sheet. So kind of, so if you go through just a couple of those specifics for the group.
Well, it started with being able to build a cube that the management team at our first company was used to, and that is, combining the sales from projects, service, sales into one. That was step one, so we could report on the business as we normally had. Step two was how do we bring in any historical data from the old system, which was very easy to do in JET, and I wouldn't know where to start simply using SQL services in AX. And not only did we bring in the historical data, but we were able to add a lot of logic to it. Anyone who goes to a new ERP system knows that you clean up your product descriptions and your customer codes, and you don't create products in the new system that are discontinued, but you still need that in your history. And with JET, we were able to quite easily add a lot of logic to take the current records if they existed and ignore the, if it didn't exist, use the old records. So those things are really important. Another key element is not only do we bring new businesses on board and want to get them have sales reporting cubes as soon as possible, even through the acquisition phase, we're doing our due diligence for a small company in Europe. What we ask for them is sort of a data dump of a product master, a customer master file, and a transaction file. Now, within a day, maybe even less, our due diligence team, our senior managers, they have a tool familiar with them to analyze that business in a format that's relatively close to what we have in our existing businesses. And in the meantime, we want to do this all. We don't have a real technical staff. When I say technical, we don't have any developers. We don't have any programmers. No SQL service real experience outside of some administration. I'm familiar with different BI solutions, and I have maybe an aptitude for it, but no formal training. So when we're looking for a solution, we know what we want to accomplish, but it can't be done with a team of developers.
Right. And that's a fairly impressive thing. One of the things you talked about early on is when you talked about having to take discontinued items, and you don't necessarily want to see that item anymore, but you want to see the sales from that item in terms of historical data. That's called a type 2 slowly changing dimension. One of the more complicated things that you can do in the BI world, and if you're able to do that without formally trained BI guys, and that's if I'm not tooting my own horn, that's an impressive thing. So good stuff. So again, a good segue into the software selection process. And this is kind of an important question to me because these are the folks that I deal with all the time. Every day I'm talking to people who are, trying to decide what to buy because there's so many different choices out there. Talk a little bit about that, hitting on what the major factors were for you in making a decision.
Yeah, I knew we needed a solution, and I went to the marketplace. I talked to different people about different solutions, and I find it interesting. The BI industry, there's a tendency to split things into two parties. It's the consumer of information and the creator of information, and they quite often come from very different skill sets. And the consumer of data, they are very focused on dashboards and look and feel and this kind of thing. And then the creators of the data, it's very technical people, BI analysts and SQL Server programmers. So, I found products sort of tended to be one or the other quite often. And I ended down the path of looking at the consumer product, and I saw a lot of great things, but after I got into it deeper, I realized it's not going to solve the problems of actually creating the information and adding a lot of logic behind the scenes to that information. So when I started looking at a true data warehousing solution, I'd seen a few and I got onto Jet, and where it struck with me in Jet is the navigation of the system, the logic you would apply to different criteria on fields, the blending, it all made a lot of sense to me, and I could see that 90% of what I was trying to accomplish I could just do on my own quite quickly and quite easily, and if there was something that was a little bit beyond what I could do, the resources at Jet would be able to quite easily accomplish that. So it became a pretty easy decision at that point, and then the future flexibility. It just, we use probably a small portion of what we can and will be using in years to come.
Right. A great point that you made about how the BI world gets divided into two parts, the front end and the back end. And this is a point that I made yesterday. I think I beat it like a dead horse. Is that the front end stuff is important because that is how your end users interact with the data. And you want it to do all sorts of things, be able to be distributed to them, put the information in the way that they need to see it, send them an alert, send the CFO an email if profit changes by X%, stuff like that. All that stuff needs to happen. But your data structure, the back end, as we call it, that has to be right? Otherwise, all that front end stuff doesn't matter. For instance, the CFO is going to get an email and says the profit changes by 10%, but it really hasn't, right? Your data is wrong unless that back end is right. And so that's a really, really crucial thing. And I think that's a good point for people to remember is that, data structure, it's all about the data. It's just all about the data. And it needs to be...
And I find that, sorry, John, I find that it's so important for particularly senior management to have a strong understanding of where the data comes from and how it's configured. If you're looking at a financial statement, it's a piece of cake. There's right or wrong. There's rules to it. There's no maybes. There's no, well, you need to consider this. But when you get into different sales cubes or purchasing cubes or inventory cubes, if you don't have a strong understanding of what data you're seeing, it can be misleading. The case in point of what we've set up now, when we sell a piece of capital equipment, it doesn't show up this is all driven by the Jet logic. It doesn't show up in the sales cube until it's actually financially recognized. Even though we've invoiced it months ago, we've made a logical decision within our company to not have it show up in the sales cube until it's financially been recognized. Conversely, when we sell a service contract, we want it to show up in the sales cube at the point of sale, despite the fact it gets recognized over the term of the contract. So we've applied different logic to both. And if your senior people don't understand or have an explanation of where that's coming from, they can get misleading information. And you can see it with the built-in cubes with AX. Some very technical people have built the cubes, and they haven't really discussed it with consumers about what they might want to see.
Right. And that's that concept of one version of the truth, right? That's, kind of data warehousing 101 is that, the truth can be anything you want it to be, but you need to come together as a company and decide what that truth is going to be. I always use a simple example of gross profit. Right? Gross profit can be anything. It can be sales minus cost of goods sold, or it can be sales minus cost of goods sold minus credit memos and vendor returns and all that stuff. Either one is right, but unless everybody agrees as to what that number is going to be, then you get massive confusion. All right, so implementation. So where BI gets a lot of its black eyes, and we've all heard that story of the 2-year-long implementation that went $500,000 over budget, and no one has what they want. And so, to tell us about how it worked at Diploma.
Yeah, well, I touched on this a little bit, and I had done some sample work with Jet, and got that good feeling of that this is something I could definitely work with, and it wasn't overly technical for me. I was capable to do it. So I was able to do some trying with things, and then the actual decision to pick Jet was quite quick. The implementation after that was fairly rapid. I did, I think, 2.5 days of training just to get me past where I was, just sort of navigating the software myself, and it was a handful of, oh, now I understand it, concepts. And within that two days, about 2 to 3 days after I came back from the training, I had a cube that we wanted to see, a sales cube that we wanted to see out of AX. And I would say 2 weeks after that, all of our historical data was in the cube in the format we wanted to see. In a simpler view on that would be something like, to give you an idea, a purchasing cube that even Jet ships with, and it's very, very complete. It could be minor tweaks for each business, but as an example, like most organizations would analyze their purchases in their currency, in their home currency. Bit unique to our business is we like to report back to our suppliers in their native currency. The cube didn't come with the native currency option, and that change in itself probably took 1.5 minutes to add the option for, in the cube you can choose Canadian dollar currency or foreign currency, where we had struggled for months because we were looking for this, and once we had installed it, it took under 2 minutes to actually apply the change. If we had tried to do that even in the AX built-in cubes, we'd have to go into SQL, program it, and then it has to go through the development cycle, then from development to UAT testing, and then get promoted into production. And that takes time and testing and a lot of different things, and this took literally 2 minutes.
All right, so 2 minutes, not 18 months is what you're telling us. Okay, so I think you kind of covered some of this in your previous answers. What are some of the ways you're using Jet today? But I didn't hear, I love the story about the adjustment sheet that you're using. Can you cover that in just a couple minutes?
Yeah, for sure. So we have our data comes in and all the different cubes, our sales cubes, our purchasing cubes, etc. But we also add in additional external files. One example would be, for sure, AX, we have our financial budget information in AX, and that's there, it's fixed, and it's got a module for that, and it's great. But that's very different than our sales plan or sales target budget. Well, we also bring that in just an Excel spreadsheet, and it's a what I call a flat file of the actual budget per product group, per sales territory for a year. That just comes in via Excel and overlays the sales data so that we can see a planned dollar amount as a measure compared to sales at whatever detail we want to add. So we have that. The other one that we would do would be, for example, an adjustment sheet, and that's an Excel spreadsheet just to make cube adjustments. I really steer people away from trying to manipulate our ERP system to accomplish something in reporting, and I point them to keep the ERP system solid in exactly the way things happened, and make adjustments in this spreadsheet that will then manipulate the cube to what you need. An example would be we're at the end of a month, and despite the fact a sale isn't going to go through until May 1st, we wanted to show up for the sales team as a April 30th sale. Well, continue as is in ERP and sell it on May 1st, because that's when it actually went out on May 1st. We have a quick adjustment file. You create one line entry into an Excel spreadsheet, and it will move that May 1st sale to April 30th in nothing other than the cube that the salespeople see. And that's quite easy to set up.
Yeah, it's a great example, and a good example of flexibility. All right. So we get a lot of people come to us in sort of a frustrated manner, and it's because they've kind of done what, again, I think they should do is they have looked at the Microsoft stuff, kind of going on the Microsoft promise that you get out of the box cubes is going to be easy, and they're sort of, frustrated because that didn't work for them, or maybe they tried to use another solution and it just kind of didn't work for them. Do you have any advice to the folks on how to get it right the first time?
Yeah, well, just the term BI has such a scope to it, and such a you look at the definition of BI and it's vague in itself. It really starts with determining what you're trying to accomplish at the beginning. The one thing that, because we had a historical sales view of our organization, we had a pretty good idea what we were trying to accomplish to start with. So it wasn't sitting in a room talking about this concept of BI and having this plethora of information to you. We knew what our target was, and that's a nice, that's a good starting point to define what you're trying to do. And then, because you can inundate people with information, we are, and even though we have used cubes for a long time, outside of sales information, it's a little bit new to us. Things like inventory cubes and purchasing cubes, and the organization is sort of moving towards seeing the benefits of those every day. But yeah, I could see how, and a lot of people get overwhelmed by BI because their first introduction to it is a built-in system like what's an AX, and they go, I can't use this, and they tend to put it aside. But I think you can use it. You just need to narrow the focus of what you're trying to see.
No, that's a great concept. I mean, yeah. I like what you said. Quit talking about BI, right? No one knows what that means. Talk about your needs. It's funny because we're doing this exact same thing at JET right now, which is we are looking for a new marketing automation tool, right? And we want to be able to send our emails out and do all that stuff automated and track all the people that come to our website like everybody does. And we're in these meetings and everybody's talking about, this piece of software, HubSpot or Pardot or Marketo, and I keep telling everybody, quit talking about the software. Let's talk about what it is that we need, right? And then we can go out and we can find software, if that's what it ends up being, that fits those needs that we've identified, right? So that's really a great idea. Tell all your folks to, let's not talk about BI just yet.
Yeah, think about when you're building a cube, for example, your number of measures. You look at the built-in cubes in AX, for example, the projects cube. There must be 40 measures. When you're thinking about sales, what are the measures? They're quantity, sales, cost. There's really nothing like that. That covers 95% of what you're ever going to need, and that's where you start with. And when you determine that you need something else, that you add it. Inventory cube, you start with quantity and value and work with that, and then over time start determining KPIs. But if you put that out to people right away, it's just overwhelming, and people don't understand the numbers and they don't trust the numbers. But if you start small and add the detail down the road, it can really help.
Yeah, it is, and I'll tell you this: it's such an easy mistake to make, because I literally just realized that I did this 20 minutes ago. I sent the person who's leading this project a quick email and said, hey, have you looked closely at HubSpot? It looks really cool. Like, I literally did that, right? There I was, naming a product, talking about a piece of software, not thinking about our needs. So it's a super easy mistake to make. I should start taking my own advice more. Okay, so this is our last question, Alan. What are you thinking about the future? What's your what are your aspirations?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit before. Just move beyond just this. There's a mentality that is just sales cube, right? But there is more to that. They're just important. Purchasing cubes are great. Inventory cubes, especially trends. We also use accounts receivable for our aging reports. But go beyond that. A data warehouse like this is great for pricing catalogs to your staff. We've got hundreds of customers that all pay different prices, and then you corresponded that price to their volumes. Don't limit yourself to just sales transactions. There's a lot more we can do. And so we really want to, where people used to look at 1 or 2 cubes all the time, we want to expand that and grow it. And then also we want to be ready for whatever challenge comes, whatever we might acquire a company that's in a completely different segment 6 months from now, and we want to be ready for it, and we feel this is the best chance to be ready for any platform that comes on board.
All right, that's great stuff. Thank you so much, Alan, for that conversation. And we're about ready to open it up to questions. I think Jason wants you to type your questions into the Q&A box. And as he's getting ready to take control and read out some of those questions, I'll remind you we have our last session tomorrow, and I'm actually going to break form a little bit and demonstrate some software. And so you're going to see all this stuff that we're talking about in action, and I'll try to remember some of the things that Alan said, and we'll show them on the screen. So how would we do an adjustment sheet like Alan does, or how would we do slowly changing dimensions? And simple things like how are we going to join tables from 2 different fields, and 2 fields from 2 different tables, so that kind of stuff. So thanks again, Alan. Stay with us for a few minutes so we can take a couple of questions if you would. And Jason, I'm going to toss it back to you.
All right, thanks, John. You're still hearing me okay?
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, so please do enter your questions. The Q&A block to the right is a great place to ask them if you've had your own BI experiences so far or are looking to make some decisions. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about right now. A couple of questions that came in there a little more on the, well, one question that was a little more on the technical side had to do with SQL and which edition of SQL is supporting your BI solution.
Right. And so we're, again, we try to be as flexible as possible, backwards compatible as far as possible. And we can go back all the way to SQL version 2005, and we're already testing for this new version. And it works with Standard Edition or Enterprise Edition, whatever you might have lying around. And Jason, I'm getting a little static. I think that's from you. I'm not sure. I hope it's not me.
Okay, I will. Sorry, I will mute myself here and look into that. We are about to wrap up, though. I don't see any other questions at this time, so we can make a final call for questions, but we could also start to wrap up.
Okay.
Well, and I guess there was a follow-up question. Would the Express edition of SQL Server be okay for
yes.
running BI? Okay. Well, the session has been recorded. We'll be posting it to our site very soon. Thanks again for attending. Please, we do hope to see you back tomorrow for part 3 of the series. John and Alan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having us. It's an honor, as always, and I hope to see everybody again tomorrow. Alan, thank you again.
Thanks, and that concludes today's session.
Bye, everybody.